Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Across the country, thousands of students will be graduating from college. So what does the future hold for the class of 2014? Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. This year is expected to be better than any during the Great Recession. One business survey found that employers said they expect to hire 8.6% more graduates from the U.S. operations than they had initially thought. On the other hand, the nation has recorded a record $1 trillion in student loan debt. Take a look at the prospects in our studio. Our guests are Dr. Rebecca Emery. She is the Career Services Director at Salisbury University. And also SU student Austin Whitehead. He is a native of Salisbury and is interning this summer at the PricewaterhouseCoopers in Baltimore and has also graduated. So, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, let me ask, I'm going to turn to Rebecca first, and it's sort of like there's sort of a mixed sense about what's going on here. Because on the one hand, we've gone through this very long recession, began in about 2008, 2009. Things have progressively gotten better. We've seen continued job growth. How do you assess where this generation is, particularly this graduating class of 2014, when it comes to getting out of college and getting a job that at least is commensurate with the kind of education that they got here?
Well, I think it continues to be a struggle, really. It's hard. We don't see the growth in jobs for college graduates that we would like. The growth in jobs are often in the service industry, which tend to be non-college jobs, low-paying jobs. Hence, I think the interest in raising the minimum wage, those kinds of things. So it really is, a different world for college graduates. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but we just have to understand that different world.
How do you compare what things are like now, particularly this year, say, as opposed to, say, a few years ago? Because I was looking at some stats a few years ago, and particularly some of the articles, and this was like bleak. It was, if you got out of college, the chances of you getting a job was real slim, and getting a job that's commensurate with your education or in your particular field was even worse. How do you compare where we are now as opposed to, say, a couple of years ago?
Well, definitely it's got steadily better, but what happens is then the new graduates, like Mr. Whitehead here, is still in competition with those people that maybe weren't fully and gainfully employed back from '08. And, so there's just a lot of there remains a lot of competition.
So I would ask you, well, first of all, how do you feel about your job prospects down the road? I mean, you have the internship, but as everybody says, internships are nice and jobs better. Where are you with all this? What's your feeling about where things are?
I believe for myself that my outlook is good. I believe I've set myself up and have taken the steps necessary to put myself in a position where I'll be able to obtain a job afterwards through multiple internships. I've had multiple internships throughout college, my college career, and I think that really shows going into the job market that you have been in the field a little bit, you've gotten a little bit of pieces from different industries, and you're a little bit more competent as to what is going on, and they like that. That's the one bad side about going into a job is that they like the experience, and how do you hire somebody without experience, which is the dilemma. So picking up those internships, I think, is what has helped me to be as confident as I am going into the future for my jobs afterwards. So this internship with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I feel as though after the internship I'll be able to take on a full-time position with them after I complete my 150 credits to get my CPA, and then go forward with that.
If I could just say, Austin's done all the right things. Those couple of internships are the way into the job market because, as he said, everyone wants experience. We see that. Even sometimes it'll say 1 year experience. Well, a couple internship adds up to experience, and at least 60% of all interns, especially with the bigger firms, convert to real jobs. So it's really, I mean, he was, landing that job with such a big firm and a prestigious firm is awesome for Salisbury University
Right,
and
course.
for him personally. Yeah.
So, by the way, have you been on other job interviews? Have you been on job interviews yet, or?
Yes, I have. To get the position with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I went through multiple interviews. I went through webcam interviews with the partner. I was asked to come up. I had dinner interviews. I had 3 interviews back to back to back with managers and 2 partners at PricewaterhouseCoopers to be able to land the position. And like we were saying before, the competition is great. I was competing against people from Rutgers, Cornell, University of Virginia, Florida. There's a lot of big schools that are that we're competing against in this area, in this Mid-Atlantic area. So you have to be, you have to put yourself in a position where you can be competitive. And I think doing internships and getting yourself out there and exposing yourself to what's going on in the world, and really being competent with what is happening in today's society is a big part. I remember when I was interviewing, they had asked me, well, what was your take? It was back when there was a lot of crime going on in Syria. They threw that out there. I'm an accounting major, they said. So what is your, what do you think about what's going on in Syria and things of that nature? You have to be overall very competent with everything that's going on in the world, not just your particular major per se. So really understanding a lot of things that are going on in the world is something that you need to prepare yourself for.
Being an educated person.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
I was going to ask you, Rebecca, because I mean we've had interns and practicums that they come through here, and they certainly are focused on their particular profession or their particular what they want to do. And a lot of, to be fair, a lot of them say we want to go into sports, right?
Right, yeah.
that's like the big thing. And I do tell them, I say, well, you need to know more because you never know what the. But first of all, if you know more, your job opportunities are going to be expanded. I mean, just because there's just so many sports jobs. But the second is that you need to be well-rounded. How significant do you think, Rebecca, that well-roundedness is in terms of particularly interacting with somebody who's going to employ you? And the kinds of questions that Austin sort of raised here.
Well, we definitely see what Austin described, that interview process as being much longer, much more arduous, involving many, many, many more people. And so you get these kinds of questions, what's happening in Syria? Why are manhole covers round?
Right, exactly.
Those kinds of things. And I think, we're just not hiring an accountant, we're hiring a person, a partner, a colleague. And so we want them to fit in. We want them to be able to interact appropriately. They took him to dinner for a reason. They wanted to see how he could behave and eat and, not be embarrassing. And,
right.
So I do think being an educated person and showing that, putting people at ease, having conversation abilities is really very important. And we still see the number one skill that people want is communication skills. No matter what industry it is, we want people to be able to communicate.
So how, Austin, before we leave this, how important, did they ask you about your previous internships and how significant was that? How did you lace that into what your response was?
If they don't ask it, my going into these, my advice would be to put it out there. You want to be humble, but you need to put it out there because it is so competitive, and you need to, if it doesn't come up what you've done in the past, you bring it up in the conversation. Oh, this is similar to something I've done prior. This is similar to this prior internship I've had. I think this is, I could bring something to the table because I did this XYZ in this internship or in this experience, this job experience. It can be anything. You can be a server and just take that teamwork from being a server working in a group of people in in a restaurant environment. I've worked in a restaurant before down in Ocean City. Everything's very fast paced, and you bring that to the table and say, yeah, I've worked in a very stressful, fast paced environment. Yes, it's not related to this industry, but the teamwork, the communication that's needed, that's the backbone of what's going on in any environment, in any industry. So having those core values set up is something that you need to stress, and you need to talk to them about. They might not ask you about your experience in a restaurant, but you say, what did you learn from the restaurant? What was your experience? What have you gained from that experience? Not just, I made a little bit of extra bucks over the summer, but I learned some teamwork and communication skills from it. So really stressing that to the person that's interviewing you. I think that's very important to do. If it's not brought up, you put it out there.
I think you'd make a good career service person. Because, that's really what interviewing has become in many ways, is storytelling. What's your story? And what are those experiences that you've had along the way, whether in class, out of class, in a volunteer situation, through sports, and in the community like you've been, that, those stories indicate who you are, how you work, what kind of colleague, again, that you're going to be.
Because one of the things, as a matter of fact, I tell students that job interviews, I tell them that job interviews should be looked at like their press conferences, which you have a set of basic messages, then they're going to ask you questions, and what you want to do is take those questions and turn them into responses that you want to have to let them know about. I mean, that's sort of the sense I get. So what would be, Rebecca, what would be your main points in terms of advising somebody who is going to go into a job interview? What should they know about the company? What should they be thinking about in terms of what they can bring to the table to an employer?
Right. Well, you can't do too much research, so sometimes students say, well, how much is, how much is that? I'm like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours worth of research minimum. They should know everything about the company that there is to know, and not just Googling them, obviously, but we should be reading press conferences and not just press releases, what their competitors say about them, their rankings, those kinds of things. Just understanding the kind of firm or organization that they are, and then understanding the job that you think you're applying for. Maybe you can get some insights through LinkedIn and other places on the people that you'll be interviewing with. So that kind of research is very important, because in fact they've looked at you on LinkedIn and perhaps Facebook, they've Googled you, so they know more about you than what you're presenting on your resume or even in a letter of recommendation. And then thinking about exactly what you said, Dawn, those press conference items that you want to put forth, and find a way to weave them in, like you were saying. What can I say? Now, you can't always use them, but we see athletes. So you mentioned sports before. I mean, many companies want athletes to work for them. They don't want them to work for them because they're football players or lacrosse players, though that's cool. They want them to work because they can set goals and reach them, and because they're competitive. And so that's what they have to show in those interviews.
So, if I were, say, for instance, if I were interviewing you for an accounting position, for example, so what kinds of things would you be telling me, Austin?
Well, now we brought it up before. Communication is key, and accounting per se, it's not the same as what it was. Accounting is now, we don't want the person that's straight A student who has that 4.0 GPA that knows the numbers on the dot. We want somebody that can go out and communicate with the people we're working with, our clients. The main focus of the firm is to bring on clients and for clients to like you and to stay with you. So I believe being an individual that can communicate with people and all types of people, being diverse and having an array of things to talk about, not just accounting per se, is something that they're really looking for. Yes, they want you to do well in your studies, but they really are looking for that well-rounded individual who can really communicate and connect with individuals and the clients, individuals in the firm and clients that you're working with. Being able to connect with everybody is more important than just talking. You really have to build those relationships, and I think that's more important to the firm now in an accounting role, and I would like to say in all industries, rather than just the skill. They can teach the skill, but they can't teach you to communicate and connect with people and build your own relationships.
You might talk about some things you guys did in classes, though, in some of your answers, right?
Yeah.
Because you get some really hands-on
Yeah.
things. I don't know if you did the auditing course where
Yep.
you, right.
I can, yeah, the auditing course, we were put into groups. I was actually asked to be a reviewer, so I would review all of the work of all the interns before submitting it to the clients. But we worked with 8 not-for-profit executive advisory councils that were throughout the area, throughout the Maryland area. And what we would do is we would compile their financial statements and put everything in a row for them. And we would present it to them at the end of the year, saying, this is what your summary, this is what your financials look like, this is things you should take as steps to for internal controls, because a lot of these places, we worked with a lot of churches too, and we say for internal controls, we don't believe anybody's stealing, but for internal controls, maybe you should implement this or implement that. But the core thing that you learn from it, you learn a little bit about the accounting, you learn about how to audit, but you also learn how to work as a team and as a group. Everybody has different obligations throughout school, whether it be sports, clubs, anything, work, but you learn to communicate well so you can make the time to meet with one another, and you build on your relationships and you build on your communication skills within these groups. We also do something in another accounting class. It's called Intermediate Accounting 2. It's called a BAM. It's a business activity model where you are given a fictitious company and you have to go through and they have an accountant that's not good at what he does, and you have to go through, fix all his mistakes, and you have to present it to the banks and everything to get loans for different equipment and leases that you want to obtain. Everything's made up as you go. You don't know what's going to come ahead of the game, but you are given this project to really work as a team to figure. Yes, you're learning the accounting as you go, but the biggest thing that I take from it is really being able to work in that team environment and to build on your communication skills.
By the way, now also, Rebecca, how significant is social media and the internet these days? I mean, I can remember looking for a job about 10, 15 years ago, but a little less than 15, and one of the big things that I did not have, say, 10 years before that, was the internet, which was just really coming online, and finding job sites and so on and so forth. How significant is the internet, social media, and how should people use it?
Well, it's really everything, people find jobs on the internet. I mean, certainly,
Sure.
but they find jobs and then they apply. Often, most of the time, people apply to jobs through the internet. So companies can have much more sophisticated systems. They're called applicant tracking systems. So if I'm applying online, I read his resume. I'm looking for keywords. So if I'm looking for JavaScript, someone who does or Dreamweaver, I'm just plugging those words in, boom, they pop up, and now I have the candidate pool. So keywords become I just can't even tell you how important that is because of this technology that we have available to us. On the other hand, while an applicant am hunting for jobs, over here recruiters are using social media to attract people and find people. So they're using LinkedIn basically to link with people, advertising their jobs, promoting what they're doing, talking about new products, anything. And so we see this professionally. 5 years ago, before LinkedIn was around, we were so worried and continued to be somewhat worried about Facebook, because if you start using Facebook when you're 12, by the time you have a lot of stuff on your, so how do you make that look professional?
Sure.
And of course there's been workarounds for that, but students still, or young professionals still have to be extremely careful. We still see stories of people losing internships and jobs and all that from Facebook things.
Right.
But social media is, in whatever form it is today, is definitely the main way people find out about jobs, apply for jobs, and so forth. That doesn't mean networking isn't still as critical as always, but you got to deal with that other piece.
Austin, so what kind of role did social media and the internet and that sort of thing play, and how you were looking out, looking for jobs and looking for what your field might offer?
Well, I am a Salisbury native, and I did foresee in going through my college career that I wanted to go across the bridge. It is a 2.5-hour drive for me, so being connected to those people, those recruiters that are across the bridge, was very important for me. And because I was in school and the other obligations that I had, I couldn't just make the drive to go meet with people. Using the internet sources, emailing, and the LinkedIn's, going and using those resources to help me to connect with these individuals that are across the bridge and to get into these positions that I'd like to was very key for me to build upon those relationships. Also going to the career fairs was a first start where you get to meet them at first hand and first person, but keeping that constant communication is key, and really putting it out there what you're doing as you go along, because they like to see progress as you go through your career in college. So they like to know what you're doing. They like to know that you get the internship position and you're stagnant and you think you're going to get a job afterwards. They like to see that you're constantly getting yourself involved into projects that will build upon yourself and to make you a better person.
Like I said, turning to one of the downsides, which is the student loan debt. I think it's now $1.2 trillion. I ran across one number that says that's triple what it was, say, 10 years ago. And just to let everybody know, I left school in 1970 without any debt whatsoever, and in order to go to a state school, it cost me maybe $100 for the books and about $10 or $15 for some fees. That was it, by the way, just to give you a sense about where education has come. So I want to turn to you, Rebecca, and to ask you, what kind of issues arise from the fact that these students are coming out of college? They have a degree that puts them certainly ahead of the game. On the other hand, they have this major debt. What are you seeing there?
I know the average college student has, about $26,000 in debt. It's really actually heartbreaking. On the other, so it does require them to do several things. One of the things is, I think that people are very careful and should be very careful about continuing their education until they get a handle on the debt that they have. In other words, does graduate school should it cause you more to go into debt? And I think the answer is no. You should find a way to pay for graduate school, and not go into more debt until you get a handle on your debt. The other thing we hear so much about is kids moving back in with mom and dad.
Right.
My son's living with me. So, there's really... I don't think that's a bad thing in any kind of way. Today's families are different than, of course, I'm much older than you guys, but, in my family there were 5 of us, or, now there's 1 or 2 in a family. That's not always the case, but in general, so the houses are bigger, so there's more room to move in. So it's not what it once was. We see college students now are friends with their parents. They seek them for advice. They're very good career counselors in the most part. So it's, and unlike maybe my generation, they're friends with their parents. So, if you can work it out, I'm not saying it's hunky-dory all the time, but I think if you can work it out, it can be a very nice way to help reduce your debt and get on top of it. We have a couple students who are doing some really cool, we have about 3 students this class going to the Peace Corps, but the same amount doing Teach for America. Those are 2 programs that your debt is put on hold, and even can be reduced depending on how you handle other things. So I often encourage people to do AmeriCorps, which is the Domestic Peace Corps. That's another way to get debt reduction and reduced. And we do have a lot of students who all want. I know Austin's doing something really cool this summer, and so it's about giving back to people. And so even though they're worried about their debt, they're also, working, for America and representing America in these ways. So that's really very cool. But it is a problem. I don't ever encourage anyone to go into more debt after undergraduate school.
Okay.
You really want to tread lightly because it can really weigh you down. We hear stories of this.
Yeah, I read where people are like in their 30s and their 40s, and they still have this debt that's following
Hanging
them.
over them, yeah.
Well, Austin, so does I don't know how much debt you have, but how does that weigh on your future?
Decision-making?
Yeah.
I've been blessed with the parents that I have and who have been able to help me out through college. But I do understand where the problems come from. $1.2 trillion. And you brought up people living with their families still. My dad, he was born in Barbados. My dad was not born in the country, and I've seen a lot of different types of countries and cultures, how they live. And down in Barbados and down in the islands, family is, a big part, and people staying with the family and living with their family is something that's not is very common. So I think in the United States, people look at it that you're living with your parents. That's not a good thing. But I think for financial reasons, I think it's a positive thing, and I think building the relationship with your family, I think that's key. Having a good family relationship is key too. But going into the future, I think you should definitely really get a handle on the current debt that you have and really not take that with you, because the more you increase that debt, the more the struggles you will have,
Sure.
the more stress you will have having to pay these things off. And just you have school, but then you have your first home that you buy, the cars that you buy, you start having a family. I would definitely encourage people to limit the amount of debt that they get from school, really assess what they want to do with their lives beforehand. I know there's a lot of people that say go into a particular field and not know what they want to do, so they decide I'm going to go for more education, and then they still don't know what they want to do. I really think consulting and meeting with individuals in the type of field that they think they might have an interest in is key before continuing that education and continuing to go on. Really consult other people who have done what you want to do. I think the key, one thing I was always told was key to success: figure out what you want, find someone who has, and do what they do. If you take that and you have that mindset, you'll no longer be taking a path where you don't know where you're going to end up. If you have no goal, you'll never hit it. So
let me ask you this: does your colleagues, your fellow students, do they worry a great deal about the debt they're accumulating, or do they psychologically kind of put it off until they finally hit graduation, and then they have to figure out what's the psychology going on with your generation? I think.
See, and I think it's a complete opposite of what I just said, that you should be mindful of what's going on. But I think everybody is not thinking about it. They're not thinking. They just kind of put it to the side and go live in college and having a good time and not really putting much thought into the debt. And then once they get there and it hits them and they have to start making payments and things of that nature, that's when the stress really happens. That's when the stress really starts. It's like, wow, this is something real. This is something that I've put myself into without thinking of the consequences going forward. So not planning on the jobs that you want, not planning on what you want to do as a job. You have to be happy too. And that's one thing. Figure out what you want. So once you get into that job, not only can you successfully pay off that debt, those student loans, but you can be happy doing what you do throughout your career.
Because it seems to me that students are in a squeeze in which you may start out thinking you want to do one thing, you still go through college, and you decide you want to do something else. So you're shifting, and all the time you're accumulating debt. And one of the concerns I think a lot of people have is whether or not, at the end of the day, you're going to come out of graduate school or graduate from college, and all you're going to get is this minimum wage job, or you're going to be in a large number, of matter of fact, of folks who get out of college, they wind up with minimum wage jobs, which hardly pays the drawback. What impact do you see on in this generation?
I don't know about a large percentage,
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's
certainly
a certain
some.
percentage, yeah.
It is a big impact, but you always have your education, and education isn't, at the end of the day, always about getting a job. It is about knowing about the world, knowing about people, learning more, understanding deeper. And so, I think in the end that will always be, you can never, no one can ever take that away.
Right.
That's what they always say. But it also gives you a springboard. I mean, if you're in a minimum wage job, who are they going to promote? Someone with a college degree who works hard, or without a college degree? So I think you put yourself in even if you're working at a job that doesn't require a college degree, eventually maybe you can move up in the management position, because always doing a good job wherever you are puts people in.
Are you concerned that because of the rising costs of education, which is skyrocketed really, that we may be pricing an entire generation, a portion of generation, out of going to school? I mean, I mentioned what I went through. A lot more people, you could afford it, but are you concerned that we might be pricing them out?
Well, I know we are very concerned at Salisbury University of keeping the cost down. Also, we have a huge push on making sure people finish in 4. So we want them to finish in 4. So when people come to us and they switch their major, we work very hard at trying to figure out how quickly they can make up this, change their major and not suffer because of it, and go into more debt. So that's the thing. But it's very hard when you're 18 or even many times 17 coming to college. I mean, you're not even 21 and you're graduated from college. Coming there and say, I want to be, or I'm going to study this, and not because of what you're learning think you'll change. But once you get your life rolling, then coming back part-time, going to school part-time, recharging, rebooting.
By the way, and just in the last minute we have, I know there's proposals to bring down the interest on some of these student loans. I know Senator Elizabeth Warren has talked about a major piece of legislation that would bring it down almost like 0.75%. We'll see whether that goes or not. How significant are those interest rates, do you think, in terms of the students as they go forward? And do you think it's fair? I mean, she's mentioned the fact that the federal government's going to make a whole lot of money, I mean, billions of dollars off the interest from students like Austin here who, say, borrow money. And she says that's just that's the wrong priority.
I'm really not an expert in that, so I think it sounds
But
like a good
that-
idea
yeah.
to reduce the interest.
Yeah, go
From an
ahead,
accounting standpoint, I like to point out that when you take on a loan, when you're paying it back, you're not paying it evenly. You're not paying the loan back evenly. The first few years, actually more than up until halfway, you're paying a majority of interest
That's
first.
right, yeah.
So say you have $100,000 in debt and you're paying $1,000 back each payment or something, to make things easier. Your $1,000 payment is not bringing that first month payment is not bringing it down to $99,000. You're actually paying $800 in interest and then $200 in towards the loan. So really, you've only brought your $100,000 in debt down from $100,000 to $99,800. The other $800 is pocketed by the government.
Do you think that's right, that the government pockets the money? Should they lower it so that
I don't think
it's an investment?
it's right, but it's been going on throughout history.
Right.
That's how interest has worked throughout history. So I tell people, when you go to buy a house, I have my real estate license as well. We have a family company, a real estate company here on the shore, Whitehead Real Estate Executives, and I tell people, don't spend up to your limit. Don't purchase a house that you can that's the top you can afford, because what's going to happen is at the end of the day, you're spending all that money and payments is going towards interest, and you're not paying down that house. It's not. So you need to be careful with what you purchase and what you're going to learn.
We've been speaking with Dr. Rebecca Emery. She is the Career Services Director at Salisbury University, also an SU student and graduate. Austin Whitehead, who is a native of Salisbury, and this summer is going to be interning at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Baltimore. I appreciate both of you joining us.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush, and thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast in iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC14. To view the schedule, visit the Daily Times or visit PAC14.org.